Hello and welcome to Hello Yellow. Thank you so much for joining the program today. I'm so excited to share with you our very special guest that's joined us all the way from Perth, Freya. Now before Freya, I give you an opportunity to chat. Freya is an incredible human soul that works in the space of philanthropy. She's a mentor, she's a spiritual leader, healer, as well as a shaman. Please join me in welcoming her to the program. Freya, thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's truly a joy to be here. Thanks for having me, Viv.
So you wear so many hats.
It's true.
And the one thing I really did want to start speaking to you about is the whole concept of star children. So tell me a little bit about that, what that is, and for those people who have never heard of it before like me.
Okay.
Talk us through.
All right. So a star child is a soul that has come from a very, very far place, far, far, far beyond the Earth, from another star system. And they have come to incarnate on Earth at this time and for some ages now to assist Earth and humanity with its raising of vibration and evolution.
So when you talk about raising a vibration, what does that actually mean?
If we consider how Earth has been for the last, even in the last 50 years, we look at the change in society, we look at the openness, how people's minds are opening, their hearts are opening. Not so long ago, the word aura was completely woo-woo and people would walk in the other direction if you said it. Now, it's pretty much a household word.
Aura, your chakras, mental health and well-being, meditation. I mean, it's really a part of our vernacular these days, and how lucky are we?
Exactly. When I was born, it was, in the mid-70s, and I was born into a household with a numbers man, with an accountant, and my mum was a nurse, and she was very much looking into studying and going further into medicine. So they were numbers and science, and my being was the total opposite to that. I was sensory perception, and beyond sensory perception, extrasensory perception.
So what does that mean, sensory perception?
Well, it means that we've all heard of the idea of a sixth sense, yeah?
Yes. I've watched the movie.
Yeah. Well, it's like we've all probably had moments where we've thought of somebody and then they've made a phone call, right?
And a coincidence.
Well, I would call it a synchronicity, not so much a coincidence, because in my understanding of reality, there is no such thing as a coincidence, yeah? There are only synchronicities. Everything is happening perfectly. So other things that we could think of are things like you know something, you just know it, and you don't know how you know it.
Is that not intuition?
It is. That's another way of calling things intuition. But there's more to it than that. There are several clair senses. So clair means clear, and it's about having clairvoyance. So most people have heard of that, being able to see things that are beyond this third dimensional world. And when you have clarity with your clairvoyance, your clairaudience, your clairsalience, which is smell and taste, and your claircogniscience, knowing, and clairsentience, which is feeling, then all of those senses can go beyond, far beyond, how we evolve in the normal senses. And so for me, those were all fully active when I was a baby, and even more so as I grew up.
So how do you know that? Obviously as a baby you don't know that about yourself.
No, well that was the problem.
And why was it a problem? Tell me why. I mean, obviously there were some things that were going on with you.
I thought everyone was like that. I really did.
And what were you seeing and hearing?
Everything from beings that were, kids talk about being scared by the boogeyman, or there's something under my bed or in the corner of the room, or the dog's barking at something that is nobody can see. Well, I could see all of those things.
What sorts of things did you see?
Some very nice things and some very not nice things. In the same way as we have polarity in this dimension, we also have polarity in the subtle dimension. So everything exists from both poles.
So what would you say to a parent, and I'm going to say I'm asking for a friend,
Yeah, okay. Happy to help.
that has a child like that.
Okay, right. Well, and there's so many more coming now. You know, as the consciousness is speeding up and evolving and opening, there's more and more of these Andromedans, Arcturians, Pleiadians, and other star children coming in.
Sounds like a Star Wars movie.
Well, you know,
Something to be
there's
said
more
for that.
truth in that than most people would like to believe. But yeah, so how you can help your children is you can become empowered as a parent and undertake learning how to care for your energy field and the energy field of your home, and what sort of things you can utilize to raise and stabilize the vibration so that your children have a safe environment, both not just about not having sharp objects around, but it's about having a safe energetic space for them with the other dimensions.
Now, I want a free session. Tell me, how do I do that? Because I'll be honest with you, there is a child of mine, which I won't mention because I don't want to, defy confidences, but every night it's you are safe. There's nothing to be scared of here. So what sorts of things can we do as parents to ensure that this child feels safe?
Okay. So...
And how do you know it's real? Like, I'm sure there's going to be people who are listening and watching going, look, I love all that. I don't believe in it. I don't. And they just want to get in my bed, and sleep with mum and dad,
Yeah.
So,
well, I can completely understand that because, and that's coming back to what I was saying before, is like I thought everybody was like I was, and my parents weren't at all. They were not. They honestly thought I was away with the fairies. But actually, what's happened is that my mum has come on the journey with me, and she's undertaken many of the things that I have studied as well, because as time went by, she realised that what was beyond her awareness before is actually real, and so she was able to open into that. I was an adult by then, so I had to lead the way. So I can only, say to parents out there, if you, it's a free will zone on Earth, right? So if you take what you need and leave the rest, and if you have the slightest bit of curiosity, then perhaps, reach out to me or someone else who is similar to me to help give you first simple steps. But in order to be able to do that, just to give everyone at home something to go on to start with, I would suggest that you would cleanse the energy field of the space. So things like, if you're having a night light for a child, then a Himalayan salt lamp,
yes,
or a selenite lamp, or a rose quartz. Rose quartz would not be my preference. It would be selenite or the Himalayan salt. Another thing you can do is put salt into a bowl with a little bit of water.
Yes.
And what that does, you know how you go to the beach and you jump in the ocean and you feel better when you come out? Well, basically it's because I would call it a bioplasmic waste disposal unit.
Say that again 3 times, Duff.
Bioplasmic waste disposal unit. So it does. It cleanses your energy field. That's its job. It's doing that for the whole planet, right? So the oceans are doing an enormous job for everyone. So you can bring that into your home in a little bowl of salt water, and as long as you keep the water topped up, it should last about a month. So that will help. Finding a beautiful prayer that you resonate with, and you don't have to be religious to have that sort of a prayer. It could be something like the Great Invocation, or it could be the St. Francis of Assisi's prayer. That's beautiful. Or you could find an invocation, and an invocation is something that calls on the beings that love us unconditionally to be with us and to help us, support us and guide us. And the caveat there is the beings that love us unconditionally. It's really important. Yeah. So there's some things, or you could use like a Palo Santo stick or quality incense. Like you actually need to not have the ones with glues and all that stuff.
So the ones from the $2 shop. Yeah, okay, not so good.
Yeah, no, they're actually poisonous, so best not to have those. Best to go and find a quality, a person who's making it themselves, and can tell you exactly what's in it, or someone who has travelled the world to find those things. I've got a good friend who's like that, so I'm very blessed.
Oh, wonderful. So we were talking about clairsensory before, and there's so many parts to it, and there's no way we could cover it all, even in this program. And the fact that your mother has come on this journey with you, and that you're teaching her.
Yeah, what a blessing.
Well, my belief is that we have the children and they are our greatest teachers if you're open to it.
Yeah.
So no matter what, whether it's in the, in the spiritual woo-woo space or in just your own behavioural changes. So I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
And coming back to the children, I wanted to talk to you about what it means to be a star child, and how do you know if you're a star child, and is there a general age, whether there's, you can have little sort of, I guess, markers and symbols to identify that?
Well, it's going to be different for each child because their gifts and abilities are going to be different depending on which star system they've come from and what their past life masteries are. So they're coming here with the purpose of assisting to awaken, to empower, to transform life on earth, to help people. The thing is that when we incarnate, we have to get through the astral, and the astral is a it's a busy place, and it's often called in ancient traditions the river of forgetfulness. So what that means is when you are an enormous soul and you have to squeeze yourself into a tiny little human body, then it's a big compression. And so we then have to go through this place that has no light to come here to this dimension so that we can then start to have this human experience and do what it is we came here to do. But we forget. So we forget who we were, where we came from, and why we're here.
Hence the term a lost soul.
That's right.
And I was going to say, and what do we do with the big air soul? There's something in that.
Yeah.
No, but the lost soul. So they've, and then your calling is to help people find what that is, what that purpose is.
So it's really reconnecting people with the magnificence of the truth of who they really are. So, a child might have, even autistic children are a good example of star children as well, because there's all different spectrums now.
So that's very interesting, because autism is just so prevalent. That's very interesting. Talk me through your thought process then.
Well, I have a lot of beautiful star children in my life, and I feel exceptionally blessed. And so I will be able to telepath with them and communicate without words. They find it much easier to speak than to articulate. And that's why it takes them longer to be able to form words and sentences.
Because they don't need the words.
Because the place that they've come from is so much oneness and so much peace and so much joy and cooperation and integrity and all of the things that we as humanity have been struggling with a little bit.
So we've basically just jumbled everything up with words and toxicity in a way.
It's a process of evolution. Every soul has got to go through a growth. We don't start out as ascended masters. We start out as the complete opposite of that. So there's a growth pathway for all of us.
And so obviously this program is all about finding opportunity through adversity. And so I do feel telepathically that is a huge part of people going through that process,
Yeah, it is. It's enormously difficult. To come back to my experience of being with people who didn't understand me at all, and they would always say things like, "Oh, Freya, she's just off with the fairies." And I wasn't. I could see the light around the trees. I could communicate with animals. I wasn't allowed to have any pets, so you know what I did?
You stole them.
I went, if there's any animals out there
Lost dogs.
who would like to come and hang out with me, then you can come here. Flock of homing pigeons would visit every day. Sulphur-crested cockatoo arrived. Stray cat, bobtail lizard, everything moved in. My parents were like, "What is going on?" Like
And
there
did you
is
just sit in the corner going,
yeah, pretty much. I was like, nothing to see here. You know, so there were points where I recognised that I was different, but and I was able to start to work with that. But there was also points where I wanted to fit in and be like everybody else. You know, and that's really hard, particularly when you get to the point of, it's one thing to be like the black sheep of your family, but once we get into school ages, then we just want to be loved. You know, as humans, we just want to be loved by our peers, by our family, and accepted. And we, well, particularly, you know, I know I've watched the youth grow up, and myself, we go through these experiences of seeing things on TV, hearing things from advertisements, we should look like this, we should behave like this, we should live a life that fits into this box. And so then we try to stop being the truth of who we are, and we try to conform. And that means that we're having to squash ourselves into an even tinier box, just so that we can be loved and accepted. And eventually that will make us sick. And that's what I would call star child sickness. And that leads us to things like, you know, drug abuse, or not being able to handle relationships, or money, or even what people would perceive at some points as insanity. Yeah, there's all sorts of things that can identify as star child sickness. I can give you an example of someone that I helped recently with one of the, because I work with a variety of modalities. Yeah, and this person had a 5-year cocaine and gambling addiction. Mm-hmm. And I suggested to them that what they were experiencing was star child sickness, which they went, what's that? I was like, well, these kind of things happen because, you know, you are frustrated with how the world is. You want the world to be how it is where you came from.
right?
And it's not, you're here to help it become how it is where you came from. And so you're railing against it. So we've got to shift this so that you can be free. So I gave that person 2 remedies, which are of the liquid crystals. And within 2 months, they had all but completely recovered from and I didn't even know it was a 5-year situation at that point. You know, I was just like, yeah, I can help.
So
yeah.
There's a lot of alcoholism, addiction in general, you know, we can list them all off.
Yeah.
Would you suggest that that is a consequence of having, you know, star child sickness?
Yeah, it's a form of it. It's most definitely. Or an attachment, potentially.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, we talked about all the different types of beings that exist in creation, and know as woo-woo and concerning as that concept can be for people at times, we do encounter them. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, we'll be like, I saw a shadow, or something moved, or those things that exist in the astral around us can at times become connected to us through points of trauma. And so the role of a shaman is to be able to help that person to identify that point of trauma and to release it. And the technique that I work with and teach for that is crystal dreaming.
And I want to come back to the crystal dreaming, absolutely. So, but staying on the star child component, how old do you so you've treated this person as an example, I'm sure you treat many. Mm-hmm. Do they have the sickness from childhood, and then therefore it's attached to a trauma, or?
The sickness comes about because they're in an environment where they start to second guess themselves, and where they start to take on the stories that other people tell them, like, you need to be like this, look like this, do this, fit into this box, or that, you know, there's something wrong with them, they're away with the fairies. That really, really badly impacts people's self-esteem, and it doesn't encourage them to flourish, to connect with the things that they really love. And, you know, my father would often talk about, you know, how it was, because he was quite a lot older than my mother. So he was raised by his grandparents. So he had this really interesting filter around what it was like. There was a huge fear of being insane. And whilst he was quite connected in his own way, he would very rarely talk about it and had a lot of fear about it, because there was the belief that you would be put into a mental institution if you even talked about seeing a ghost. Right? So it's the impacts of the density of this environment that come at us from every different direction that causes us to start to try to be a shape that we're not, because we're not supported by society. And in our schooling systems, unless you go to a Steiner school or something similar, there isn't educational pathways that help a child to grapple with all of these different parts of creation that exist. And there's no support for parents either. You know, it's, you know, and I would like to just, you know, preface and say there is a place for everything in creation. And constantly medicating children isn't necessarily the only way. And I would suggest that these other tools can be a complement to it.
And it was just actually, it's funny, I was just going to ask you about medicine, because with, you know, ADHD, autism, you know, all of those things are on the spectrum, which everyone is sort of blaming COVID for the digitisation of the way in which we lived for a very, very long time. And the kids are very, very, very heavily dependent and addicted to, you know, all of the digital technology. And the assumptions are that that is actually what's causing, you know, these behaviours.
It was around before that. We all know that.
Yeah. Or maybe it was just being brought to light, and that's what the blame, or the source of the blame is, you know, talked about.
I think it's important, you know, to recognise one big thing, and we as human beings have what I would describe as an unhealthy habit of blaming anyone and anything for anything. We need to take responsibility, 100% responsibility. It's only at the point that you can say to yourself, that was an interesting experience. How did I create that for myself?
Very much so.
That we can actually be in the driver's seat of our life. Now, I understand that when somebody crosses your boundary, boom, there's anger that comes.
There's a high justice of, you know, that was wrong, you need to
you should this
and apologise, and, you know.
all of that. I understand. I'm human too, you know. As much as I'm an incarnated star child, I'm in a human vehicle having a human experience. So we all have those same parts. So it's not really at all about what's happening in the world around you. It's about what have I come here to learn? And that's the empowered stance, is like, what classroom am I in? What am I meant to be learning? And the one thing that we also have sort of become disconnected with as humanity is divine law. And I'm not talking about religion. And again, you know, I'm not religious, although I was raised Roman Catholic. The issue there was that the chaplain couldn't answer my questions. You know, I had bigger questions, and so that box didn't fit me. It doesn't mean that I don't believe in Jesus. It doesn't mean I don't believe in God. I just call it source, divine. You know, there's other words for the same thing.
And I think it's really important, because people do have a fear attachment to those words. So whatever that is for you, it's, you know, just a belief in something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think that feels a lot more safer for most people.
Multi-faith, however you like to, you know, Buddha, it's all good, it's all Gooda, right?
It's all Gooda.
Down. So, you know, but what we need to take into account is that all of these different prophets and sages are speaking from the same source. They're all talking about the same things, which is, if you forgive, then you'll feel better, and the doorway of the heart can remain open. It's not slammed shut. Like, we're humans, we're sentient, we're meant to love. And it's the traumas that of the adversities that we go through that cause us to close our heart and retract from life. And that's really unhealthy for us. It's just that we've never been taught how to alchemize the pain.
So how do we do that? You know, how do we actually do that, and how do we have the courage to really step into that adversity and understand that, you know, on the other side of it sits the better version of you?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you know, there's heaps of things we can do. We can meditate, we can get an energy healing, we can pray, we can go and get in the ocean, go for a walk. There's lots of things we can do to start to shift energy, yeah? Get in the sunshine. And a free thing you can do is the Ho'oponopono chant.
The ho-ho-ho-ho what?
The Ho'oponopono. So there was this amazing psychiatrist who was working in the worst mental institution in Hawaii. And he took on the role of, I believe it was general manager there, and he was asked, do you want to go around and see the wards and meet the people? And he said, no, thank you. I'm just going to sit in my office, bring me the file of the worst case we have here. And he sat and read through that file, and at every point that he felt an emotional response, he started the prayer, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And he continued to say that in a heartfelt way until that emotion shifted. Then he'd continue reading and worked, and every time emotion came up in him, he kept doing that. And so this is the principle of oneness we're talking about, right? So as he went through that file after file, all of those people with the hardest cases would never recovered and left the hospital. And that's the power of being in alignment with divine law. And that's one simple but very powerful tool that everyone can access.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, I want to sit here and talk to you again more and more and more. So thank you for being here this week. And next week, we're going to chat more about the crystal dreaming.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk more about star childing.
Yeah.
And how we can alchemize our traumas.
Fantastic.
So thank you for joining us this week. Tune in again for next week with more wonderful information with Freya.